Hello everyone. Today we will start a new chapter which is When People Rebel 1857 and After. It tells the story of the Indian rebellion of the 1857, why people rebelled, important events, and what happened after the revolt. This chapter helps us understand the beginning of India's struggle for independence. Even before 1857, there were big uprisings against the British. One of the most important was the Khurda uprising in Odisha in 1817. Here, Bakshi Jagabandhu led the Paikas meaning traditional soldiers, and local leaders against British policy changes that took away their land and temple rights. They even seized Puri and made the local king their leader. This rebellion was crushed, but it left a strong message of resistance and inspired future uprising. Now, this rebellion was triggered by land dispossession, interference in temple management, and high taxes. The Pack rebellion demonstrated how British exploitative policies led to local unrest and provided important lesson for both colonial officials and Indian society. Its use of local symbol and popular participation set a precedent that would reappear in later revolt, including 1857. By studying these earlier movements, like the Khurda uprising, we see that the fight against colonial rule was widespread and deeply rooted in the daily struggles and losses of ordinary people. These regional uprisings laid the groundwork for the much larger and coordinated rebellion that would erupt across North India in 1857. Down how the British weakened Indian rulers. The British took away powers from Indian rulers like the Nawabs and Rajas by stationing British officials called residents in their court, disbanding their armies, and taking control of their land and money. The company used important policies like the doctrine of lapse and subsidiary alliance to annex many princely states without heirs or under their control. Rulers such as Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi and Nana Sahib of Kanpur tried to protect their kingdom by negotiating, but the British refused. This loss of power and respect made many rulers angry and resentful toward British rule. The British also annexed Awadh in 1856, claiming it was badly governed. This hurt both the ruling class and the common people. The British aimed to erase the symbolic authority of the Mughal Empire too. The last emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was told his successor would not be kings anymore. Mughal titles were abolished and coins stopped carrying the emperor's name. This deeply hurt many Indians, especially around Delhi and Uttar Pradesh, where the Mughal legacy was strong. Examine how British policies systematically dismantled traditional power structure to consolidate colonial control. The doctrine of lapse gave the British legal mean to annex states without a male heir, while the subsidiary alliance forced princely rulers into subservience. The erosion of Mughal symbolic authority removed a unifying political figure, weakening indigenous legitimacy and increasing dissatisfaction among elites and the population alike. Now let's focus on Awadh. We have seen how British policies like the doctrine of lapse took away powers from Indian rulers. One of the most important regions affected was Awadh, which is in present day Uttar Pradesh. In 1856, the British annexed Awadh, claiming that it was badly governed. This was used as an excuse by Governor General Dalhousie to take direct control of Awadh from its ruler. This annexation made many people angry, not only the rulers but also the common people. The landowners, zamindars, and peasants lost their lands and rights. This created widespread resentment against British government. Now, Awadh's annexation was a major cause of unrest because it broke the social and economic balance in the region. The loss of lands and privileges for zamindars and peasants hurt their livelihood and dignity, pushing them towards resistance. This anger quickly spread to other parts of the society, contributing to the wider rebellion of 1857. Now let's see the impact on peasants, zamindars and soldiers. Now high taxes and strict revenue collection by the British made peasants and landlords lose their ancestral land. Many peasants became poor and indebted because they could not pay the heavy taxes. Caused great distress and anger among the rural population. At the same time, Indian soldiers in the British Army, called sepoys, were unhappy due to the low pay, poor working conditions, and being treated unfairly. They were especially upset about a new law that made them serve overseas, which they believed would harm their religion and caste. For example, they feared crossing the sea would make them lose their caste status. Now, because many sepoys came from peasant families, the frustration of the countryside quickly spread to the soldier, creating a strong connection between the two groups' anger against British. Now, socio-economic grievances among the peasants and zamindars combined with military dissatisfaction among sepoys over pay and religious fear created a broad-based opposition to British rule. This widespread discontent helped unify different groups, making the rebellion not just a military mutiny but a popular uprising against colonial exploitation. Now we have learned how high taxes and army dissatisfaction created anger among peasants, landlords, and sepoys. Alongside these economic and military grievances, the British tried to bring social change to India. They banned customs like sati, where a widow would burn herself on her husband's funeral pyre, and encouraged widows to remarry to improve their lives. However, many Indians thought these reforms were an attack on their religion and traditional way of life. They believed that the British were meddling in their religious and cultural practices, which made them suspicious and fearful. For example, some groups saw the ban on sati as disrespectful to Hindu beliefs and that reforms like widow remarriage threatened social norms. These feelings of distrust increased tension between the Indians and the British. Now, cultural interference by the British, such as social reforms, heightened communal fears and mistrust. These reforms, though aimed at progress, were perceived as an attack on Indian tradition, fueling anti British sentiments and broadening the resentment that eventually led to the revolt of 1857. Now, people's letter, diaries, and stories from the time show how fear and rumors about British intentions spread quickly. Many soldiers, especially worried about their religion, they heard rumors that the British wanted to force them to give up their religious belief or eat meat forbidden by their faith. Such rumors created distress and anger among the sepoys and common people alike, building up the feeling that the British could not be trusted. Now, studying primary sources like the Majha Pravas, it is a travelogue giving a peasant's perspective. It gives a memoirs of Sepoy officers and it reveals how emotional narrative and rumors became powerful tools that mobilized wider participation in the rebellion. These accounts illustrate the deeply personal and cultural fears that inspire resistance beyond mere political or economic reasons. We saw how rumors and fears spread fast among the soldiers and common people, building distrust and anger toward the British. This fear became real when sepoys refused to use the new cartridge that they believed were greased with cow and pig fat, offending their religious beliefs. The rebellion started in Meerut in May 1857. Soldiers in the British Army, called sepoys, were given new cartridges for their gun. These cartridges were rumored to be greased with cow and pig fat, which was offensive to both Hindu and Muslim religious beliefs. The sepoys refused to use these cartridges. On May 10, 1857, the soldiers in Meerut revolted against their British officers. This mutiny quickly spread and grew into the much larger rebellion against British rule, involving many groups across northern and central India. Now, execution of Mangal Pandey, a sepoy who rebelled earlier against the British, and the cartridge issue were immediate sparks that triggered the broader uprising. These events highlighted the growing discontent among soldiers and symbolized deeper political, social, and religious grievances, leading to the mass rebellion that became the first war of independence. Now, the rebellion was led by some important leaders who commanded respect and inspired many to join the fight against the British. Some of the well-known leaders include Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi, famous for her bravery and fighting skill; Nana Sahib of Kanpur, who played a key role in organizing the rebels; Begum Hazrat Mahal of Lucknow, who bravely defended her territory during the siege. These leaders fought in different areas but all shared the goal of resisting British rule and protecting their people. Now let's look at this map to understand where the most important events of the 1857 rebellion took place. The red triangles, as you can see in the picture, are the main centers of the revolt like Meerut, where the mutiny began, Delhi, Lucknow, Kanpur, Jhansi, Faizabad, Bareilly. You can see how these places are spread across north and central India. The black triangle show other centers of the revolt. These were also affected but were not the main focus. Map helps you see why the revolt was such a major event. It spread across many regions and connected people from various cities and backgrounds. As you can see on the map, the 1857 revolt was not confined to one city or province. It spread fast from Meerut to Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi, and beyond. The leaders at each place inspired people locally to join. By studying the map, you will easily remember which cities became famous for the rebellion and why the revolt was truly a national crisis for British rule in India. Now, the British fought back hard to regain control. They captured Delhi and other important centers of the rebellion. Many rebels were killed, captured, or punished harshly. The rebellion was eventually crushed by 1858. As a result of the revolt, the British East India Company, which had ruled India for almost 100 years, was dissolved. From 1858 onwards, India came under the direct control of the British Crown, marking a new phase of the British rule. Now here, study of the Government of India Act 1858 becomes important. It marked a shift from company to crown rule. It centralized administration under the British monarch. Also examining the military reorganization post 1857, which included recruiting soldiers from communities considered loyal and restructuring the army to prevent future mutinies. Now, after the rebellion of 1857, the British realized they needed to change some of their policies to prevent future uprising. They promised to respect Indian rulers and assured them their position would be safe. The British also said they would not interfere in Indian religious practices. After the 1857, British employed policies which were mostly focused on divide and rule. It was to deepen communal divide and to secure colonial control. Religious non-interference was more about political strategy to avoid united opposition, and army recruitment policies strengthened division by favoring certain groups over others. British, after 1857, employed divide and rule to deepen communal divide and secure colonial control. Religious non-interference was more about political strategy to avoid united opposition, and army recruitment policies strengthened division by favoring certain groups over others, shaping future socio-political dynamics in India. Now let's go through the key dates when major events of the 1857 rebellion took place. First is 29th March 1857. Mangal Pandey, a brave sepoy, attacked British officers. This act of defiance was one of the earliest signs of the coming revolt. Now, 10th May 1857, the mutiny officially began in Meerut when Sipahis refused to use cartridges rumored to offend their religious belief. This was the starting point of the massive rebellion. After this, 11 May 1857, the rebels reached Delhi and declared Bahadur Shah Zafar as their leader, trying to bring together different groups under the Mughal emperor's symbolic rule. Now, in June 1857, the siege of Lucknow began, where Begum Hazrat Mahal led the fight to defend the city against British forces. After this, 14 September 1857, the British recaptured Delhi after fierce battle, marking a major turning point in regaining control. Then in March 1858, British recaptured Lucknow, ending one of the last major rebel strongholds. By the 1858, the East India Company's rule ended and the India came under the direct control of the British Crown, marking a new era in colonial governance. While the revolt of 1857 was happening in India, another huge rebellion was taking place in China. While the revolt of 1857 was happening in India, another huge rebellion was taking place in China. This was the Taiping Rebellion, where thousands of poor people, led by Hong, rose up against the emperor to build a new kingdom called the Heavenly Kingdom of Great Peace. The rebels wanted everyone to be equal and to stop unfair taxes and to stop bad habits like gambling and drinking. Now let's recall what was the demand of Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi that were refused by the British. Now Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi's main demand was the recognition of her adopted son Damodar Rao as the legitimate heir to the throne following her husband's death. The British, invoking the doctrine of lapse, a policy that denied the right to adopted heirs in princely estate, refused her request. This refusal led to the annexation of Jhansi by the British East India Company. The denial of the sovereign rights and annexation of Jhansi became a direct catalyst for Rani Lakshmibai's active leadership in the 1857 revolt, symbolizing widespread resistance against unjust British policies. The next is, what did the British do to protect the interest of those who converted to Christianity? Now, to protect the interest of those who converted to Christianity, the British introduced legal provision that allowed converts Christian converts to inherit ancestral property and ensured their civil rights were maintained. This was a significant departure from traditional customs, under which converts could be disinherited by their families. By securing inheritance and legal status for converts, the British aimed to promote conversions and reassure new Christians of their social and economic security. However, such policies also heightened resentment among the broader Indian populace, who perceived these measures as intrusive and disruptive to established social norms, thereby contributing to the underlying causes of widespread discontent during the colonial period. And the next is, what objection did the sepoys have to the new cartridges that they were asked to use? The sepoys had a strong objection to the new cartridges they were asked to use because the cartridges were rumored to be greased with the fat of cows and pigs. To use the cartridge, sepoys had to bite them open with their teeth. For Hindu sepoys, contact with the cow fat would violate their religious belief, as cows are sacred in Hinduism. For Muslim sepoys, contact with pig fat was strictly forbidden, as pigs are considered impure in Islam. Using the cartridges would force them to break their religious rules, which they felt was both disrespectful and a threat to their faith. These fears were heightened by existing distrust and fueled rumors that the British intended to undermine and convert Indian soldiers from their religion. Now, the next is, how did the last Mughal emperor live the last 7 years of his life? The last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, lived the final years of his life in exile and hardship. After the failure of the 1857 revolt, he was captured by the British, tried for treason, and found guilty. Stripped of his title and power, he was sent to Rangoon, which is present day Yangon, Myanmar, where he lived under constant surveillance and in poor health. He died there in 1862, far from the throne he once held, symbolizing the end of the Mughal Empire and the complete establishment of the British Crown rule in India. This marked not only the demise of a dynasty, but also the symbolic closure of an indigenous rule in India, as the British abolished Mughal titles and coins bearing the emperor's name, further eroding his authority during his last days. Now, next is, what could be the reason for the confidence of the British rulers about their position in India before May 1857? Now, the confidence of the British ruler about their position in India before May 1857 can be attributed to several factors. First is political and military dominance. The British East India Company had established control over large parts of India through annexation, subsidiary alliance, and the doctrine of lapse. Major Indian rulers had been weakened, and the company had disbanded or reduced native armies. ensuring minimal military threat from Indian power. The British had stationed resident at the court of Indian princes, effectively controlling their administration and revenues. This control gave the British a stronghold over Indian state and resources. Now, the next is the East India Company's revenue policies made it the main power in most regions. Despite sporadic unrest, they believed economic control would ensure political stability. Now, the British miscalculated the depth of popular resentment caused by economic hardship, land dispossession, cultural interference, and military grievances, viewing Indian society as fragmented and unlikely to unite against them. Now, the British Army was seen as better equipped, disciplined, and organized compared to Indian forces. They also believed that Indian sepoys would remain loyal, and the new infield rifle cartridges issue was initially underestimated. Now, the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, had little real power. The British had abolished royal titles and authority symbols, believing there was no legitimate native figure around whom rebellion could unify. These factors combined to give British a strong sense of security and confidence in their rule over India before the May 1857 outbreak of the rebellion. The next is what impact did Bahadur Shah Zafar's support to the rebellion have on the people and the ruling families? Now, Bahadur Shah Zafar's support to the 1857 rebellion had a profound impact on both the people and the ruling families. First is he was a symbol of unity and legitimacy, so his endorsement of the revolt transformed it from a sepoy mutiny into a broader, more legitimate uprising. Many Indians across different regions saw him a symbol of Indian sovereignty and rallied behind the Mughal emperor's leadership, giving the rebellion a unifying figure. Now, several dethroned or dispossessed rulers and chiefs believed that the restoring Mughal authority could lead to the restoration of their own powers and privileges. His leadership appealed to the local rulers who hoped to regain their lost status under British policies, thus increasing their participation in the rebellion. Now, the emperor's involvement heightened nationalist feelings and inspired peasants, soldiers, and aristocrats alike to join against the British operations. Now, the next is how did the British succeed in securing the submission of the rebel landowners of Awadh? Now, British succeeded in securing the submission of the rebel landowners of the Awadh through a combination of military force and strategic concession. They imposed martial law and carried out military operations to suppress the rebellion. At the same time, they offered leniency and promised to protect the traditional right of the landowners who surrendered and submitted to British authority. The British also promised to respect the property and status of loyal landlords, using rewards and amnesty to win back their support. The combination of harsh repression against rebels and conciliatory measures towards compliment landowners helped the British restore control over Awadh. Now, the next is in what ways did the British change their policies as a result of the rebellion of 1857? Now, after the rebellion of 1857, the British made significant changes to their policies in India to prevent future uprising. The British government abolished the East India Company's rule and took direct control over India through the British Crown. The office of the Viceroy was created to administer India under the Crown. Now, British promised not to annex any more princely states and allowed rulers to adopt heirs, reversing the doctrine of lapse policy. However, all rulers had to acknowledge the British monarch as the supreme sovereign. Now, the British increased the number of European soldiers in the army while reducing Indian soldiers. They recruited heavily from communities they considered loyal, such as Sikhs, Gorkhas, and Pathans, and were cautious about recruiting from regions involved in the rebellion. Now, the British adopted a policy of non interference in religious and social custom to avoid offending Indian sentiments, learning from the backlash against the earlier social reform. Now, landlords and zamindars were given greater security of tenure and protection of their land rights to win their loyalty. Now, the Muslims faced suspicion and harsh treatment as the British saw them as key conspirator in the rebellion. Their properties were confiscated and they experienced political marginalization. The British deepened communal divide, especially by favoring certain communities over others to maintain better control. These policy change aimed to stabilize British rule, placate Indian rulers and elites, prevent armed conspiracies, and maintain social order by careful balancing of power among various groups in India. Now, in the next video, we will start with the new chapter, which is chapter 6, Weavers, Iron Smelter, and Factory Owners. Thank you.